Elizabeth's coronation was in 1953. At the time, Britain still had a fairly large global empire, although India had declared independence a few years before. It was a huge event with representatives from all over the empire. With, I think, they had to expand Westminster Abbey or sort of build new seating in Westminster Abbey to fit all the people who were invited. It was a big occasion, lavish, and very few people remember it. It's sort of, now it's kind of entered into history because it's, my grandmother would talk about it. She's long dead. There are a few people who were around, especially who were children in 1953 when Elizabeth was crowned, but that seems like a very, very different Britain and a very, very different British Commonwealth / Empire to what you have today. So Charles became king right after his mother died. So he is King of England. This isn't and the UK and all the Commonwealth realms. This isn't a step that's necessary to make him king, but it is the most important ceremonial marker of the kind of creation of his kingship. I think one helpful way to think about this, well, one thing that is true about this is that it is a religious ceremony, that it is a kind of old ceremony that marks the ascension of a king or queen to the throne, and as part of that, they are being appointed as the head of the Church of England. So you've got a few different things rolled into one. You've got the affirmation of the king as kind of the head of the aristocracy and a kind of a hereditary aristocracy in Britain. You have the kind of state occasion, that this is also a kind of a set of ceremonies about them being crowned as the head of government. And then you also have this religious occasion, and a lot of the imagery. If you watch the coronation, a lot of the symbolism will be religious and specifically Anglican symbolism, where Charles is created as the head of the Anglican Church, which has a very specific history in Britain. It goes back to the Reformation. It goes back to Henry VIII. And then a lot of the kind of paraphernalia of the coronation is even older than that. I think a lot of it goes back to late medieval England, and in some cases even earlier. And I think what you'll see in the news images of this will be a lot of flags, a lot of pictures of Charles, a lot of kind of paraphernalia around the coronation. This is complicated though, because you're seeing the part of this that's the people who are really enthusiastic. And I think there is this is 60 million people. There are a significant minority of Britons who don't like the monarchy, who maybe, even if they go to the celebrations, aren't there for Charles. They're there for the party. And so I think it's a really complicated question, because there's an enormous amount of diversity in Britain itself, and even more once you look at the very, very wide range of kind of cultural, linguistic, and political and national backgrounds in the Commonwealth realms. So there's no real one typical response to this among the subjects of the new king. There are a lot of subjects of the new king who maybe don't want to be subjects of a hereditary monarchy. A lot of the media coverage around the coronation will stress the traditional elements, and you'll see these items which are artifacts which are literally hundreds, maybe even 1,000 years old. But a lot of the ceremonies itself have been adapted a lot over time, and the size of the ceremonies, who's invited, the specific wording, some of the symbolism have changed a lot from king to queen to king to queen and from generation to generation. So I think it's important to also look out for the adaptations to modern conditions. One of the things that will be very different about this coronation is that even though it is literally an Anglican church service, one of the things they've talked about stressing is including a lot of different religions to reflect the religious diversity of modern Britain in the ceremony itself. This is very, very different from Elizabeth's coronation, where kind of national or sort of cultural diversity was celebrated, but not so much religious diversity. I think what you'll see is a bit more a different presentation of who is a modern Briton in the ceremony. I think I just repeat or kind of reiterate this point about adaptability, that again, visually there'll be a lot of stress on the traditions. Although I think they're also going for a little bit of mixing in kind of the flavour of modern Britain to this traditional ceremony. But I think if you do watch the ceremony, be alert to all the choices that are being made. There are certain things they cannot change. The guest list is I think it's set by the government, not entirely by the monarchy. There are certain parts of the ceremony that have to happen in order for it to be a successful religious and political ceremony. You have to crown the king. You have to anoint the king. You have to anoint the king, then you have to crown the king. They have to. There's going to be a procession. There's going to be a lot of jewels. There's going to be crowns. But there are so many crowns and so many jewels that even the choice of which crowns to use, which jewels to use, which parts of the ceremony to emphasize, which parts of his various different realms to emphasize. These are all conscious choices that they're making to stress or to not stress different elements of the kind of enormous grab bag of things that are involved in the British monarchy. So I think be attentive to the choices that they're making, because in these big ceremonies, this is where those choices actually have. This is one of the most important parts of his job as king, is to conduct these major ceremonies. There will only be one coronation, and it is a big part of his job. And so the choices that he makes and the choices that the government makes, the choices that royal advisors are making in crafting this ceremony are conscious ones and have a symbolic meaning, and have a kind of, and when the public looks at these, they will matter to the public. I'll go back to what I said earlier about how people project their identities or their notions of Britishness onto the royal family. This can be both a powerful advantage for a royal family, but it's also really dangerous in a sense. If people look at the royal family and see their racist in-laws rather than their kind old grandmother, then that's a problem. And I think that there are big generational differences and big differences across different kind of interest groups, different demographics in British society in their perceptions of royal family, and how the royal family presents itself matters to a lot of people.